Snow was falling so softly, it looked like the sky was breathing when my mother's voice sliced through the front hall like a blade. "Don't you dare track snow in here, God, Elena! Can't you do anything right?" Her words cracked louder than the wind outside, ricocheting off the polished entryway of the Newport Coast mansion I'd worked my whole life to build. I stood in the doorway with my daughter's tiny hand wrapped in mine, the warmth of her palm trembling. The wreath on the door still swung behind us, pine needles shivering from the force of my mother yanking it open. My father appeared in the hallway, his jaw locked, the familiar look of disappointment hardening his face. "You're late," he barked. "We said 5, not 5:30. His eyes dropped to Lily. "And you brought her?" For a heartbeat, the entire house went silent except for the crackle of the fireplace. The chandeliers glowed with the kind of warmth that looked like home but felt nothing like it. My heart climbed into my throat. I squeezed Lily's hand, bracing for the storm that always came next, the storm I'd foolishly hoped might never return. My mother stepped aside, but only far enough for Lily to slip in. "Not for me." "Come on," she said sharply. "Dinner's getting cold." I waited for the softness I knew wouldn't come. It didn't. It never did. The smell of roasted rosemary chicken drifted through the dining room, a scent that once meant comfort, but now only reminded me how easy it was for them to stage perfection for guests while letting their cruelty bloom in private. I helped Lily out of her coat and smoothed her hair before she ran toward the Christmas tree, tall, glittering, flawless. She stopped just inches away, hands hovering over an ornament shaped like a crystal snowflake. "Don't touch," my mother snapped from across the table without even turning. "Those are expensive. I don't want fingerprints on them." Lily froze. She looked back at me with wide brown eyes. I forced a smile that didn't reach my own. "It's okay, honey," I whispered. "Just look with your eyes." My father took his seat at the head of the table, settling into his throne with the same entitlement he'd worn all his life. My siblings arrived seconds later, my sister Victoria draped in designer silk, my brother-in-law Elijah checking his watch like he had somewhere more important to be, Grace, the youngest, juggling her phone, and a latte she didn't bother hiding inside the house rules. Victoria eyed me from across the table and smiled without warmth. "Well, Seattle must be treating you," modestly. Her gaze dipped to my shoes, the simple black pair I'd chosen, because comfort mattered more than image these days. But I guess that makes sense. Raising a kid alone must be expensive. I pulled out a chair for Lily and helped her sit. "We're doing fine," Elijah snorted. "Right, with your little computer gig." My mother clasped her hands together as she took her place. "Well, she tries," she said with a sigh. "That's what matters." The way she said tries like a pat on the head for a dog who almost did a trick hit harder than I wanted it to. I took my seat quietly, willing my heartbeat to slow. They still didn't know. They didn't know that the mortgage on their remodeled home, the tuition for Grace's 3 children, the new sedan my father bragged about at his golf club, all of it came from me. From Lighthouse Systems. From the company they never believed in, and still thought was a little tech job. They didn't know they sat on comfort built from my exhaustion. But I wasn't here to reveal anything. I wasn't here to fight. I was here because Lily had asked if she had grandparents, and I wanted just once to try to give her something resembling a family holiday. Dinner began the way every holiday meal in that house did, with the illusion of civility. My mother served plates with a grace that would fool anyone who didn't grow up watching her shatter that grace behind closed doors. My father carved the chicken like he was hosting a televised cooking show. Victoria and Elijah filled the air with stories about their vacations, shopping sprees, and spa memberships without once asking about my life. Grace leaned over the table. "So, Elena, still doing computers?" I nodded. "Cybersecurity. We expanded." "Oh, that reminds me," Victoria cut in. "Did I tell you? Our mysterious family sponsor increased their support again this month. 8,000. Isn't that something?" My mother beamed. "An absolute blessing from above." My father lifted his glass. "To generous strangers who know the value of family." I almost choked on my own breath. Lily swung her legs under the chair and whispered to me, "Mama." "What's a sponsor?" I brushed her cheek. "Someone who helps," and then louder so only she could hear, "but not someone we owe." As dessert plates were cleared, the atmosphere began its familiar suffocating shift. My father leaned back in his chair. His eyes narrowed at me the same way they used to before a lecture, so he said, "What exactly do you do again?" "Something with data." "Right," I answered evenly. "I run Lighthouse Systems. We build cybersecurity." He waved a hand. "No need to exaggerate. We all know it's just a small operation." Victoria laughed softly. "Dad, don't be mean. She's trying. Mean. Trying." The words scraped something old inside me. "It's going well," I said quietly. "Better than before." "Good," my mother said. "Maybe one day you'll have something real." "Something real?" My hands tightened around my napkin. Lily tapped my arm. "Mama, can I have more whipped cream?" "You can," I said, forcing cheer. "But only if Grandma says it's okay." My mother barely glanced at her. "Fine. Just don't make a mess." Lily reached for the bowl. Her small fingers slipped. The spoon fell. Cream splattered across the tablecloth. It happened in an instant. My father slammed his hand against the table so hard the silverware jumped. "Jesus Christ, Elena. Can't you control your child?" Lily recoiled, eyes wide with fear. My entire body snapped into instinct. "She's 4, I said sharply. "It was an accident." Victoria smirked. "Guess the apple didn't fall far." My mother looked at the stain and hissed, "This is why you shouldn't bring a child into an adult setting." Lily's chin trembled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean." I stood so fast my chair scraped the floor. "That's enough." The room froze. Every face turned toward me, lips parted, stunned that I'd raised my voice. My father stood too. "Don't you use that tone in my house." I held Lily's hand. "Then we'll leave." My mother clutched her pearls. "Elena, don't be dramatic." My father jabbed a finger toward the front door. "If you walk out that door, don't come back expecting help. Ever. Help." That was the moment something quiet inside me snapped, not out of anger but revelation. They weren't my family. They were people who had fed on my silence, my effort, my money, and my hope. I took Lily's coat, zipped it up, lifted her into my arms. My voice was steady. Cold. Clean. "All right." Just one word. But it was the first time in my life that I felt free. I walked to the door, snow blowing in as I opened it. The cold hit my face like truth. Behind me, my father's voice echoed, "You'll be back. You always come crawling back." I turned just once, meeting his eyes with a calm that startled even me. "No," I said, "not this time." And then I stepped into the falling snow, with my daughter held tight against my chest, leaving behind a house full of lights, warmth, and people who never knew how to love me. For the first time, the cold felt kinder than the home I left. Lily fell asleep before we even reached the highway, her small body curled in the back seat beneath the soft blanket I kept for nights exactly like this. Her breath fogged the window as the lights of Newport flickered past, shrinking behind us like a world I'd finally outgrown. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, the silence inside the car, humming louder than the storm outside. My cheeks still burned with the echo of my father's voice, but something else was beginning to spread through me, calm, steady, unshakable. When we reached the hotel, I carried Lily through the lobby, her head resting on my shoulder, her tiny hand tangled in my hair. The receptionist gave me a sympathetic smile when she saw the exhaustion in my eyes but didn't ask questions. I appreciated that more than she knew. Questions were for people who had someone to answer to. I no longer did. Inside the room, I laid Lily on the queen-size bed, pulled the blanket up to her chin, then stood there for a moment, watching her chest rise and fall. My little girl. The only person in this world who never made me feel small. The only person I refused to fail. The heater hummed quietly, filling the room with a gentle warmth. Outside, the wind pressed against the window like it wanted to get in. Inside, for the first time all evening, I let my shoulders drop. Then my phone buzzed. Text from Mom, he didn't mean it. Come back tomorrow, we'll talk. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred, then flipped the phone face down on the dresser. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was relief. I sat beside the window watching snow fall over the quiet parking lot. It reminded me of all the winters spent in that house, years of tiptoeing through traditions that never belonged to me. Christmas mornings where my siblings opened expensive gifts while I smiled at scarves and mittens. Family dinners where laughter floated above my head like I wasn't part of it. I used to convince myself things would get better if I just tried harder, if I worked harder, if I proved myself worthy enough. But tonight, standing in the doorway with my daughter trembling beside me, I finally understood. There was nothing I could do to make them choose me. The thought didn't break me. It freed me. I turned on the lamp, opened my laptop, and clicked into the accounting dashboard I hadn't touched since the last time my mother said, "We're going through a rough patch." The screen loaded slowly, humming like a confession. There it was, 8 separate automatic transfers, 5 years of deposits into the Harrison Family Support Fund. Every month, on time, silent, mortgage, car payments, renovations, vacations, daycare fees for Grace's children, private tutoring for Victoria's twins, club membership renewals for my father, all of it, every comfort they bragged about, paid for by the daughter they tried to erase. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. Anger didn't rise in me, not the screaming kind, not the burning kind. What I felt was clarity, a cold, sharp line drawing itself in my chest. I clicked deactivate recurring transfers. The system asked, "Are you sure?" I whispered yes and pressed confirm. The screen flashed, all recurring transfers successfully cancelled. A strange light feeling spread through me. Peace, I realized. It was peace. I closed the laptop and returned to the bed. Lily stirred slightly, brushing her cheek against the pillow. I lay down beside her and whispered, "We're okay. We're going to be more than okay." She didn't wake. Children trust that the world will be what their mother makes it. I intended to make ours kind. Sometime between midnight and dawn, sleep finally pulled me under. When I woke, a pale stripe of morning light cut across the room. Lily was still asleep, her curls spread over the pillow like morning sunshine. I stroked her hair and breathed her in warmth, softness, safety. She was everything I never had growing up. After breakfast, I loaded our suitcases back into the car. The cold air bit at my fingertips, but it felt cleaner than last night's hallway, full of stares and accusations. Lily climbed into her seat, hugging the stuffed rabbit she'd brought from Seattle. "Where are we going now, Mommy?" she asked through a yawn. "Home," I said. "Not to Portland, not to the house where I wasn't welcome, but home, our home." On the drive to the airport, my phone buzzed nonstop. I ignored it until we reached security. Finally, I glanced down. 36 missed calls, 9 from Mom, 7 from Victoria, 4 from Dad, 13 from unknown Portland numbers, 1 voicemail from Grace. No one ever called me this much before, certainly not in the same week, let alone the same morning. The truth hit me like a slow, inevitable wave. They must have tried to use the cards. They must have hit the wall I had stood behind for years, the wall I had quietly held up with my own hands. I slipped the phone back into my bag and took Lily's hand. "What's wrong, Mommy?" she asked. "Nothing," I said softly. "Absolutely nothing." We boarded the flight, buckled in, and watched the world shrink beneath us as the plane climbed into the clouds. Lily leaned her head against my arm, humming to herself. It amazed me how easily she found joy even after last night. Somewhere over the mountains, she looked up at me and whispered, "Mommy, why did Grandpa yell at me?" My throat tightened, but I kept my voice gentle. "Because grown-ups forget how to be kind sometimes. Will he yell again?" "No," I said. "He won't." She nodded, trusting me completely. Her trust was the anchor I'd build the rest of my life on. The plane landed in Seattle just past noon. The sky was gray, the air crisp, and the city lights shimmered faintly through the mist. We collected our luggage, walked out into the familiar cool breeze, and breathed in something that felt like possibility. I drove us home slowly, letting the streets unfold like a welcome back. When we reached our apartment, Lily jumped onto the couch and kicked her legs with excitement. "Can we decorate our little tree tonight?" "We can," I said. "We will." After setting her up with markers and paper ornaments, I sat at the dining table with my laptop. The system dashboard blinked awake. The numbers didn't lie. Neither did the silence from my family that morning. They'd learned the truth without ever knowing my name was attached to it. They'd discovered the edge of their comfort. They'd learned what life looks like when a woman stops holding the world together for them. I closed the laptop slowly, letting the moment settle over me like a soft blanket. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was done. "Mommy, look," Lily waved a paper star she'd cut out. I smiled, pulling her into my lap. This tiny apartment, this little girl, this quiet life was worth more than every apology my family would never give. "We're home," I whispered into her hair. "We're finally home." Lily fell asleep early that night, curled against my side as the soft glow of our little Christmas tree flickered across the living room walls. I watched her chest rise and fall steady and peaceful, while the chaos I'd left behind buzzed silently inside my phone. I hadn't checked the screen once since boarding the plane, but now I could feel the unanswered messages humming like distant thunder. I didn't reach for it. Not yet. Instead, I carried Lily to bed, tucked her beneath her favorite quilt, then stood in the doorway for a long moment, letting the quiet soak into me. When I finally sat down on the couch, the phone lay face down on the coffee table, as if it already knew I didn't want what waited inside it. Still, I picked it up. The notifications lit up the screen like an alarm. 66 missed calls. 21 voicemails. 13 desperate texts. I took a slow breath and opened the first voicemail. My mother's voice burst through the speaker, frantic and too quick, as if she'd run up a flight of stairs. "Hazel, call me immediately. It's important. Your father's furious and just call me." I deleted it. The next voicemail was from Victoria, sounding irritated, not worried, not apologetic, just annoyed. "Hazel, what is going on, Dad?" said his card declined. "Mine too. Call Mom. She's panicking." Delete. Another one from Dad. "Your mother thinks this is your doing. Fix it. Now." Delete. I leaned back, letting the phone drop onto my lap. The old me would have cried. The old me would have apologized without knowing for what. The old me would have driven all the way back to Portland in a storm to make sure no one was upset with her. But that version of myself had been buried in last night's snow. I opened the banking portal again, just to be sure. Every transfer was still canceled. Every account I'd once propped up was frozen in its comfort. Their panic wasn't my responsibility. Not anymore. My laptop chimed with a notification, an automated report from my CFO about year-end projections. I opened the document and rows of numbers filled the screen. Projected revenue $480 million annually. Company valuation $48 million confirmed. New contracts pending: HarborTech, Argonne Labs, Fidelity West. Just reading it steadied me. Lunadyne wasn't luck. It wasn't inheritance. It wasn't a gift someone handed down to me. It was built from nights like last nights where I was alone, scared, determined, writing code in a tiny apartment while Lily slept beside me. Every keystroke was a rebellion. Every breakthrough was an escape. And my family had benefited from all of it without knowing, without appreciating, without ever caring who their stability came from. I closed the file and shut the laptop. The glow of the Christmas tree reflected in the dark screen like a second, smaller galaxy. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from my mother. "Your father is sick with stress. Are you happy? Call me." I laughed softly. Not because it was funny, but because of how painfully predictable it all was. The blame, the manipulation, the guilt, packaged neatly in a single sentence. My childhood trapped inside punctuation. I blocked her number, then Dad's, then Victoria's, then Grace's, then my father's office line, then the landline at my childhood home. When the list was complete, silence filled the room like warm water. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered through a thin veil of mist. Cars passed below their headlights, brushing over the pavement like fleeting ghosts. I wrapped my arms around myself and stared into the night. Then my phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. I almost ignored it until another message followed. Hazel. It's me, Sam. My breath caught. Sam McCarthy. My college roommate. My once best friend. The one I'd trusted when Lily was born. The one who had stood beside me long before I built Lunadyne. And the one I had pushed away after my marriage collapsed, afraid she'd see me break. I opened her message. I saw you posted from Seattle. I'm here for the holidays too. Are you okay? If you need anything, call me. For the first time since walking out of my parents' house, something inside me loosened. A tiny knot of tension at the base of my ribs unraveled. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I'd convinced myself I needed to be. Before I could reply, another message came. I'm actually at the Harbor District Cafe. If you're awake, I'd love to see you. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I could say no. I could close the curtains, finish decorating with Lily, pretend nothing had happened. But something about Sam's message, gentle, familiar, warm, pulled at a corner of my heart I hadn't touched in years. I typed back, "Give me 20 minutes." I grabbed my coat, slipped on my boots, and stepped out into the cold night. The air bit at my cheeks, but it felt clean, bracing, almost invigorating. Seattle's winter streets shimmered with rain-washed reflections from the neon signs. As I walked, I realized I wasn't trembling anymore. The cold made me sharper, not smaller. The cafe sat on a corner overlooking the harbor, its windows glowing amber like a promise of warmth. I pushed the door open and the chime jingled softly. There she was. Sam stood near the counter wearing the same messy bun she'd worn in college and the same soft smile that used to anchor me through exams, breakups, and all-nighters. When her eyes met mine, she gasped softly. Hazel. In 2 steps, she was hugging me, wrapping her arms around me in a way I hadn't felt in years, familiar, steady grounding. I exhaled into her shoulder, surprised by how much I needed that moment. She pulled back slightly, her hands still resting on my arms. What happened? She asked gently. And without planning to, I told her. Not everything. Not the entire collapse of the last 48 hours. Just enough. My family kicked me out last night, I whispered. At Christmas dinner. In front of Lily. Sam's face tightened with anger on my behalf. Hazel, I'm so sorry. They don't know who I am, I said. My voice cracked. They never did. We sat down at a corner table, 2 mugs of hot chocolate steaming between us. Sam listened without interrupting. She always had. I told her about the shouting, the humiliation, the cold walk to the car, about Lily crying, about freezing the accounts, about the missed calls. When I finished, she let out a slow breath. You didn't deserve any of that, she said firmly, and Lily definitely didn't. No, I said, we didn't. And Hazel, she leaned closer. Cutting them off wasn't cruel, it was necessary. I swallowed hard, my eyes burning. So why do I still feel guilty? Because you were trained to, she said softly. Not because you're wrong. I stared into my cup, watching the steam curl upward like a prayer. Everything is about to collapse for them, I whispered. Sam tilted her head. Hazel, they never built anything. You did. They just lived in the house you carried on your back. The truth of it landed with quiet force. We talked until closing time. About Lily, about work, about the foundation I wanted to start someday for single mothers in STEM. Sam listened the way she always had, with a heart big enough to hold all the things I couldn't say out loud. When we stepped outside, she hugged me again. You're stronger than you know, she whispered. And you're not alone this time. Okay, okay. For the first time, I believed it. When I returned to the apartment, Lily was still asleep. I kissed her forehead, smelling faint traces of peppermint soap, and crawled into bed beside her. The night felt different now, less like the aftermath of a collapse, more like the quiet before a rise. Tomorrow they would panic harder. Tomorrow the calls would multiply. Tomorrow they'd learn what life looked like without the daughter they dismissed. But tonight, for the first time in years, I felt warm, and I slept without fear. The snow outside Portland fell in slow, drifting sheets the morning I drove back toward my parents' neighborhood. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed closure. After the quiet strength of the night before, after talking with Sam, after watching Lily sleep with her stuffed polar bear tucked under her chin, I realized something unsettling. My family's power over me wasn't in their words. It was in my silence. And if I didn't confront what happened, that silence would grow again like frost around my ribs. So I drove. Not to reconcile, not to apologize, but to look at the wreckage one last time before letting it all go. The streets were slick, slushy, lined with pine trees heavy under winter. My parents' house sat at the top of a gentle hill just as it had when I was a child. The Christmas lights still blinked along the roofline, cheerful and hollow at the same time. I parked at the curb and sat there for a long moment, breathing in the cold air that seeped through the cracked window. "You don't owe them softness," I whispered the reminder aloud, steadying myself. Then I stepped out of the car, boots crunching against ice, and pushed through the cold until I reached the front door. I didn't even have to knock. The door burst open before I touched it. My mother stood there, pale, shaking, wrapped in a robe that looked 2 sizes too small for her panic. Her eyes, once sharp with disapproval, were swollen. "Hazel," she breathed, clutching the doorframe. "Oh, thank God, come inside. I didn't move." "Mom." My voice was calm, almost detached. "I'm only here to talk. Nothing more." She flinched as if the neutrality hurt her. Inside the house looked nothing like the scene from the night before. The earlier glitter and gold had been replaced with disarray, papers strewn on the dining table, my father pacing in the living room shouting into his phone, Victoria crying into a mug of coffee. My mother pulled me in before I could refuse. The warmth hit my face like a slap. "Where have you been?" she demanded, voice trembling with anger disguised as concern. "Do you have any idea what's happening? Your father's accounts are locked. Mine too. Your sister, Mom." I stepped out of her grip. "Stop." Her eyes widened with disbelief. "Stop, Hazel. Do you think this is a joke? Just because you're upset doesn't give you the right to ruin us?" "I didn't ruin anyone," I said. "I simply stopped paying for everything." Victoria spun around, mascara, smudged hair wild. "You can't just do that," she snapped. "We relied on that trust. You relied, I corrected. Not me." She crossed her arms. "You owe us." I actually laughed. "I owe you nothing." My father slammed his phone onto the counter. "Of course it was you," he roared. "I told your mother. I told Victoria. I knew nobody else would sabotage this family." I turned to face him fully. "You sabotaged yourselves," I said quietly. "I just stopped carrying the weight." He marched closer, his jaw tight, his face red, in a way I remembered too well. "You ungrateful girl." "Woman," I corrected. "Single mother. Founder. CEO." His expression flickered just for a moment, confusion, disbelief, something that almost looked like fear. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. My mother stepped between us as if smoothing over the air would fix anything. "Hazel, your father's heart can't handle this. Just turn the trust back on, please. We'll discuss everything calmly. We'll start over." I looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time saw not power or intimidation, just a woman afraid of losing comfort. "Mom," I said softly, "you don't want to start over. You want things to go back to the way they were." Her lips pressed tight. A silent confession. I let the quiet stretch. Then I finally answered the question they hadn't asked yet, the ones simmering beneath their fear, their irritation, their anger. "Where do you think the trust money came from?" I asked. Silence. Victoria blinked. "Some donor." Dad said no. I shook my head. There was no donor. My father frowned. "Then who me?" I said. "It was me all along." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father froze. Victoria let out a tiny disbelieving laugh. "You, Hazel, don't be ridiculous. You were always broke. You were always." I stepped closer. Not threatening. Just certain. "My company Lunadyne just hit a $48 million valuation. I've been supporting all of you for years. The mortgage, the cars, the flights, the boutique rent, Dad's golf membership, all of it." My father's face crumpled like he'd been slapped. "You," he whispered, breath shaky. "You're lying." "I have no reason to lie," I replied. "But you have every reason to doubt me. You always have." My mother staggered backward, gripping a chair. "How could you keep something like that from us?" I laughed softly. "Mom, you never wanted to hear anything about my life. Not the good, not the bad. Only the parts that made you feel superior." Victoria shoved a strand of hair behind her ear, pacing in frantic circles. "This isn't real," she muttered. "It can't be. If you were rich, if you had a tech company, you would have told us." "Why?" I asked. "So you could take more." Her jaw snapped shut. My father stepped forward again, trying to regain authority. "Hazel," he said, voice low and trembling. "We are your family. Family." The word hit me like a stone. Heavy. Familiar. Wrong. "Family doesn't treat me like a burden," I said. "Family doesn't humiliate me at Christmas dinner. Family doesn't scream at my daughter for spilling water." Victoria's cheeks turned pink with embarrassment. "Dad didn't mean." "He always means it," I snapped. "He just never admits it." My father puffed out his chest. "You don't speak to me that way. And you don't get to speak to me at all," I replied. His face twisted. "You selfish girl." "Woman," I repeated. "Who built a life without any of you?" "You built nothing," he shouted. I tilted my head. "Then why is everything collapsing without me?" Silence. Cold, thick, enough to drown in. I turned to leave. My mother lunged forward. "Hazel, please, please just turn the trust back on until we figure things out." "No," I said. Calm. Final. "That trust is gone." Victoria exploded. "You can't do this. I already did." My father slammed his fist on the countertop. "Hazel, if you leave this house, I open the door." He froze. "Don't come back." I stepped outside into the snow, letting the cold air fill my lungs. "I wasn't planning to," I said. And I closed the door behind me. I didn't cry on the drive back to Seattle. Not once. The tears had dried somewhere between my father's last threat and the cold wind that hit my face when I stepped outside that house. His house, the one my money had kept standing. The snow on the windshield blurred into a steady white haze, and the hum of the tires on the road felt more like a heartbeat than sound. Lily slept in the back seat, her cheek pressed against her car seat, her little mitten still gripping her stuffed polar bear, as if nothing in her small world had shifted. But mine had. Something inside me had snapped clean apart quietly, almost politely, and I knew I would never fit back into the shape they wanted again. By the time we reached Seattle, the storm had followed us. The streets were slick, the skyline blurred with fog, and the streetlights glowed faintly through the falling snow. I carried Lily up to the apartment and tucked her into bed. Her breathing softened instantly as if her dreams refused to carry any of the weight I held. Once she was asleep, I wrapped myself in a blanket and sat on the living room floor. My laptop lay open in front of me, glowing softly in the dim room. It was nearly midnight, but exhaustion kept its distance, hovering just out of reach. A familiar voice note notification blinked on the screen. "Sam," I clicked play. "Hazel, I'm home now. I just wanted to make sure you got back safely. Call me if you're awake." I typed back, "I'm awake. Just tired." She replied instantly. "Do you want company I can come by?" I hesitated, then typed, "Maybe tomorrow. Thank you for checking on me." After sending the message, I leaned my head back against the couch. Silence settled around me like a warm coat. Then my phone buzzed again. Not Sam, not an unknown caller. Zoe, I answered immediately. Boss, she said, her voice soft but alert. I'm assuming you saw the numbers tonight. HarborTech signed the preliminary contract. For the first time since dinner the night before, my face cracked into a real smile. That's good news, I said. Better than good. Also, I saw something else. She paused. Your father tried to call the company line. Twice. Of course he did. He wants answers, she added. Should I continue blocking the calls? Yes, I said. And if any of them try emailing the corporate account, forward the messages to legal. You got it. Zoe hesitated again. How are you feeling, really? I let out a long, uneven exhale. Free, I said, in a way I haven't felt in years. Good, she whispered. You deserve that. After the call ended, I curled the blanket tighter around myself and opened a different set of documents, the ones I had avoided for months. The proposal for the new Women in Tech initiative, notes for a scholarship program, drafts for a resource center for single mothers. Ideas I had filed away under someday because family obligations had carved holes in my time, my energy, my belief in myself. Not anymore. I began to type, and I didn't stop until the clock neared 3 a.m. When I finally crawled into bed beside Lily, the ache in my chest felt lighter. Not healed, not yet, but hollowed out enough for something new to grow. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the apartment through cracks in the curtains. Lily padded into my room with sleepy eyes and bed-tangled curls. Mommy, she whispered, can we go get pancakes? Her voice was soft and hopeful. Yes, I said instantly. Let's go. She smiled, the kind of smile that made every crack inside me seal itself for a moment. After breakfast, we walked to the harbor where seagulls swooped low and the water lapped against the docks. The city felt calmer today, as if it sensed I needed air instead of noise. At a picnic bench near the water, Lily climbed into my lap and watched boats drifting in the distance. Grandma was mad, she said quietly. I froze. Yes, I whispered. She was. Did I do something wrong? The question hit me harder than anything my father had said. No, sweetheart, I said, wrapping my arms around her. You didn't do anything wrong. Grown-ups just forget how to be kind sometimes. She rested her head against my chest. You're kind. I kissed her hair. I try. We sat there for a long time, just breathing in the cold air, letting the sound of the water soothe us. Then my phone buzzed. This time it wasn't family. It was a contact I hadn't heard from in years. Evan Cole, HarborTech CEO, I answered. Hazel, he said, his voice crisp, professional. Your assistant briefed me on the situation involving your family. I hope everything is stable enough for us to move forward. I blinked. The story had already reached him. Everything is fine, I said. Better than fine. I'm ready to move forward. Good, he said. Because I'd like to finalize the contract this week instead of next month. There's a gap in our schedule and we wanted to seize it. I stared out at the harbor. A week. This wasn't just good news, this was monumental. HarborTech was one of the biggest Northwestern defense infrastructure firms in the country. Their contract alone could elevate Lunadyne from fast-growing startup to dominant industry player. Send the paperwork, I said. I'll have legal review it by Monday. Excellent, he replied. And Hazel, for what it's worth, not many people would have survived what you've been through. But you're still here, stronger. Most impressive thing I've seen this year. After the call ended, I closed my eyes and let the cold breeze wash over me. For the first time, someone outside of my circle saw the fight behind my success and respected it. Lily tugged my sleeve. Mommy, are we okay? I scooped her into my arms. We're better than okay, I whispered. We're starting over. That night, after Lily fell asleep with a half-finished coloring book open beside her, I sat down at my desk and drafted a letter to Lunadyne's board. A bold one. A proposal to expand into national infrastructure, security, bridges, airports, power grids. A new frontier. One my family would never understand. And didn't need to. When I finished, I slid the laptop closed and stood by the window. Snow drifted outside like pieces of a life I had finally shaken loose. My phone lay on the counter, silent now. No missed calls, no frantic messages, no guilt woven into someone else's panic. Just me, just Lily, just the life I was finally choosing to build. And for the first time since childhood, I felt something new rising in my chest. Not fear, not duty, not shame, but possibility. A soft, growing certainty that everything collapsing behind me was making room for something extraordinary ahead. The sun was barely rising over Seattle when I walked into Lunadine's headquarters, the glass doors sliding open with a quiet hiss. I hadn't slept much, but the adrenaline of what lay ahead sharpened every step. Today wasn't just another workday. Today I was stepping back into the world fully, no longer hiding behind obligations, guilt, or emotional debts I didn't owe. My heels clicked against polished concrete as I made my way through the lobby. The enormous digital display on the far wall pulsed with glowing data streams our signature aesthetic. I paused for a moment, watching the lines of code dance across the screen. I had built this, every line, every algorithm, every choice, and now there was nothing left dimming that truth. Morning, Hazel, one of the receptionists called, offering a warm smile. Morning, I said, returning it with one of my own that actually felt genuine. The elevator ride to the top floor was fast and silent. The moment the doors opened, Zoe appeared, hair in a tight bun, tablet in hand, coffee in the other. She thrust the cup toward me with a kind of urgency reserved for emergencies. "You're going to need this," she announced. "That bad already?" I asked, taking a sip. "Oh yes," she said, falling into step beside me as I walked toward my office. "We have the team waiting in conference room A. Legal, infrastructure, engineers, communications." The Harbor Tech contract sent ripples everywhere. "Good ripples?" I asked. "The kind that make the board giddy and terrified at the same time," she said with a smirk. We pushed through the glass doors of the conference room. Conversations halted. Heads turned. My team, engineers, analysts, executives, straightened like soldiers awaiting instructions. "Good morning," I said, setting my coffee on the table. "Let's get started." A dozen laptops flipped open. A dozen minds focused. A dozen lives tied to a company that no longer felt like an escape for me, but a home I had built with intention and grit. "First," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table, "we're expediting the Harbor Tech partnership. They want the full onboarding done within a week." A murmur swept through the room. "That's ambitious," my head engineer Matteo said. "But not impossible." I nodded. "Good, because we're doing it." Zoe tapped her tablet. "I drafted a revised rollout schedule based on the new timeline." "Send it," I said, "and have legal flag any contract updates for my approval." The meeting rolled from one agenda item to the next: security testing protocols, personnel assignments, integration tools, infrastructural risk assessments. My voice was steady, decisive, unhindered by second-guessing or fear. My mind moved swiftly the way it always did when I felt fully in control. No noise from outside, no guilt from within, just clarity. Halfway through the meeting, the conference room phone lit up, the external line. Zoe shot me a wary glance. "Let it ring," I said. But a moment later, her tablet vibrated. She looked down and froze. "What is it?" I asked. She swallowed. "Your sister. She left a voicemail on the corporate line." I sighed. "Play it." She hesitated, then pressed the speaker. Victoria's voice blasted through the room. "Hazel, what are you doing? Dad is losing it." "Mom won't stop crying. You can't just disappear. The trust is empty." "Do you know what that means?" "We can't cover anything. Call me back. Fix this." The message ended abruptly. Silence filled the table. My team stared at me, their expressions a mix of discomfort, confusion, and something like protective loyalty. I exhaled. "Delete it." Zoe nodded. Matteo cleared his throat. "Do you want a moment?" "No," I said. "Let's continue." And we did. Because my family's crisis was no longer my crisis. Their chaos was no longer my obligation. Their expectations were no longer my burden. By early afternoon, the meeting ended. People filed out with fresh momentum, discussing timelines and logistics. Zoe lingered behind. "You handled that well," she said quietly. "I'm done letting them derail my life." She nodded slowly. "Good, because something tells me they're far from done trying." Before I could respond, the glass door opened again, and in walked someone I hadn't expected to see ever, let alone today. Sam. She stood there with a familiar half-smile, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "Thought you might need reinforcements," she said. The tension in my shoulders eased instantly. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "Visiting a friend," she said. "Also hand-delivering caffeine? Also making sure you didn't lock yourself in your office and forget to eat." I laughed, stepping forward to hug her. Zoe's eyebrows lifted. "This is Sam," I nodded. "The one and only." Sam looked around the sleek office. "So this is Lunadyne." Honestly, I expected more messy wires and fewer glass walls. "This is the clean part," I joked. Sam held out a second coffee. "Come up for air. Take a break." I glanced at the stack of contracts on the table, then at Sam's expectant smile. "Fine," I said. 15 minutes. We went to the private rooftop garden, my favorite place in the entire building. Snow dusted the shrubs and railings, and the city stretched wide below us. Steam curled from our cups. "So," Sam said, leaning against the railing. "How are you really?" I watched the gray clouds drifting over the skyline. "I think I'm waking up," I whispered. She nudged my shoulder. "About damn time." For a few minutes we stood quietly watching the city breathe beneath the blanket of winter. Then Sam said, "You don't have to hide what you've built anymore. The world is allowed to see you." "I know," I said. "I just got used to being small around the people who raised me." "You're not small," she said firmly. "You're one of the strongest women I've ever met." I swallowed hard. "Thank you." She bumped my shoulder again. "Besides, you're kind of famous now. Did you see the latest Forbes ranking?" I blinked. "What?" She grinned. "You're on the Rising Innovators list. Number 4. Sam?" I breathed out, stunned. "You deserve it," she said warmly. Just as I was about to respond, Zoe rushed onto the rooftop, slightly out of breath. "Hazel emergency." My stomach tightened. "What kind?" She handed me her tablet. On the screen was a headline from a local Portland news station: "Former bank executive and family face, financial turmoil after trust fund collapse. Daughter unreachable." Below it, a photo of my parents standing in front of their freshly renovated house, looking lost. Sam read over my shoulder. "Oh boy." Zoe whispered, "They're going public." I straightened my jacket. "Let them," I said. Sam looked at me. "You sure?" I nodded, once calm, resolute. "They spent years silencing me. If they want the world involved now, fine. For once the world will hear the truth. Eventually." Zoe exhaled. "What do you want us to do?" "Nothing," I said. "They can shout into the wind all they want. I'm done." Sam squeezed my arm. "Good. Because you have bigger things ahead." I looked out at the city, my city alive beneath winter's quiet grip, and I realized she was right. Something bigger was coming. Something that belonged entirely to me. And not even my family's implosion would stop me from walking toward it. The house in Newport Coast was still dark when I arrived, the automatic gates sliding open with their usual soft mechanical sigh. I hadn't planned on coming here so soon, but something inside me, a small steady voice I'd ignored for years, kept pushing until I found myself on the Pacific Coast Highway headlights, cutting through the early morning fog. The moment the gates closed behind me, the world outside seemed to vanish. The palm trees lining the driveway swayed in the breeze, their shadows stretching across the stone path like long, dark fingers. The ocean crashed steadily beyond the cliffs, a deep rhythm that always reminded me of strength I hadn't known I possessed. I parked near the front entrance, stepped out, and breathed in the salt, sweet morning air. This house wasn't just a home. It was the first thing I had ever built entirely for myself. Motion lights flickered on as I walked inside. The foyer glowed a warm gold, the marble floors reflecting faint threads of sunrise. In the silence, I could hear my own breathing. Slow, controlled, steady. I set my bags down and wandered into the living room where the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the ocean. Dawn was breaking in thin streaks of coral and soft tangerines stretching across the water like a promise. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel alone. I didn't feel trapped in anyone else's idea of who I should be. My phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the quiet. I didn't need to check to know who it was. I ignored it and walked toward the balcony. The sound of the waves was louder out here, the air cooler, the wind carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the garden below. I wrapped my sweater tighter around myself and stared at the horizon, letting its vastness settle inside my chest. Behind me, the phone rang again and again and again. 66 missed calls yesterday. 32 more this morning already. I finally looked down at the screen, not to answer but to see how desperate they'd become. Mom again. Dad, Victoria, unknown number, Mom again, voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. I pressed mute and set the phone on the balcony railing. Then I went inside and brewed a pot of coffee, letting the rich aroma fill the room. I walked barefoot through the quiet house, touching the back of the sofa, the edge of the kitchen island, the cool marble countertop, all reminders of the life I'd built. Brick by brick, line by line of code, contract by contract. This house had always been my escape. Today it was something more. A border, a boundary, a declaration. The knock came shortly after 7. I frowned. No one knew I was here except Zoe and Sam. I walked to the door cautiously and looked through the security camera feed on my phone. Sam stood outside in a long camel-colored coat, her cheeks flushed from the cold. She looked up at the camera and gave a small, hopeful wave. Relief washed through me. I opened the door. "You drove all the way down here?" I asked. She shrugged. Seattle felt too far today. And besides, she held up a paper bag. I brought scones. I stepped aside. "Come in before you freeze." She walked inside, pausing to take in the space. "Still breathtaking," she said. "You know, for a genius who writes code all day, you have impeccable taste." I snorted. I Googled everything. We went to the kitchen, and Sam set the bag down, pulling out 2 warm berry scones wrapped in parchment. She handed me one, then poured herself coffee while I leaned against the counter. "You left after our talk pretty quickly yesterday," she said gently. "How did the rest of your day go?" I took a bite of the scone to stall answering. When I finally spoke, my voice was calmer than I expected. I went back to their house. Sam froze cup halfway to her lips. And they did exactly what I thought they'd do. She set her cup down. "Hazel, I'm not upset," I said. "Not anymore. I just needed to see it clearly." Sam reached out, resting her hand lightly on my arm. "I'm proud of you." The words hit harder than they should have. We sat at the kitchen table, talking through everything. Lily, the confrontation, the chaos, the trust fund, the news articles. Sam listened without judgment, her presence warm and steady, the way it had been when we were 20, when life was simpler but somehow felt heavier. When I finished, she sighed. "They're panicking because they can't survive without you. That's not love, Hazel. That's dependency. I know. And you don't owe them your life. I know that too. But do you believe it?" she asked softly. I looked away. "Almost," I whispered. Sam nodded, understanding without pushing. Around 10, we moved to the living room. The view was clearer now, waves silver blue in the sunlight, gulls riding the wind above them. Sam curled up on the couch while I spread documents out across the coffee table. "Work?" she asked. "Harbor Tech contract," I said. "We're finalizing terms today." Sam grinned. "Look at you, fully in CEO mode." "I don't think I ever left," I said. She laughed, then her expression softened. You're different, Hazel. How lighter, she said. Like someone finally loosened the knots around your ribs. I didn't answer, because it was true. And I wasn't sure how to explain the quiet relief of finally choosing myself. My phone buzzed again, vibrating aggressively against the table. I didn't need to look. Sam's eyes flicked to it, then back to me. Do you want me to throw that into the ocean? I smiled. Tempting. She reached over, pressed the screen, and gasped. Wow, they're persistent. One more day, I murmured. One more day and they'll realize I'm not coming back. Sam's expression shifted. You're allowed to change your number, you know. My entire childhood would crumble if I did. She raised an eyebrow. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Before I could respond, the phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from Zoe. I checked it. Call from Harbor Tech CEO. Contract approval pending. Conference meeting in 20 minutes. I grabbed my laptop. Time to work. Sam stood. I'll make more coffee. Want company while you negotiate? Stay, I said. Please. She smiled softly. Always. I settled at the dining table, laptop, open, documents displayed in clean columns. When the meeting began, my tone shifted instantly into professional precision. These were my people. My world. My strength. Negotiations went smoothly. HarborTech accepted almost every proposal Lunadyne made. They trusted me. They trusted the company. They trusted the systems I'd built with my own hands. When the final papers were signed electronically, I sat back, breath leaving me in a long exhale. It was done. The biggest contract of Lunadyne's history. A door my family had never even known existed. A world they never believed I could step into. Sam brought a mug of fresh coffee to my side. Well, I smiled, feeling the full weight of what had just happened. It's official. She let out a delighted laugh. Hazel, that's incredible. I closed the laptop and leaned back, watching sunlight sparkle across the water. This contract would change everything. Expand Lunadyne, amplify its reach, solidify its presence in national security sectors. All the success my family had mocked, belittled, ignored, was now impossible to deny. Sam eased into the chair beside me. What are you thinking? I stared out at the wide expanse of ocean. That everything is exactly where it needs to be, I said softly, including me. And for the first time in my life, I felt the truth of it settle deep in my bones. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't proving anything to anyone. I was choosing myself fully, finally, without apology. And I wasn't turning back. Snow fell in thin, weightless flakes across Newport Coast the morning I took Lily out to the garden behind the house. She ran ahead of me in her pink boots, laughing as her footprints marked the frost-dusted lawn. The Pacific winds swept through the cliffs, carrying the scent of winter and salt water, and for a moment the world felt untouched, quiet, clean, new. Mommy, look, Lily pointed at the koi pond, where ice had formed in delicate patterns along the edges. It's frozen like a snowflake. It's beautiful, I said, reaching down to steady her as she leaned closer. Watching her wonder felt like an anchor in my chest, a reminder that not everything had to be heavy or complicated. Some things, like her joy, remained simple, pure. I lifted her into my arms and kissed her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender shampoo mixed with the crisp morning air. She wrapped her arms around my neck and whispered, I love our house. So do I thought. But before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. I checked the screen. Unknown number, followed immediately by a second call, then a voicemail. The quiet of the garden dissolved into an uneasy hum. I ignored the calls, tucked the phone back into my coat, and carried Lily inside. We spent the next few hours decorating gingerbread cookies in the kitchen, Lily pressing too many gumdrops on one roof, while I pretended not to notice. But when she finally ran off to the living room to watch her favorite holiday movie, I slipped away toward my office, closed the door, and checked the messages. The first voicemail was short. Hazel, please pick up. We need to talk. My mother's voice trembled with something between anger and desperation. I deleted it. The second voicemail was from my father. You made your point. Enough is enough. Call me back. Now, delete. The third voicemail was longer, Victoria's voice cracking. Dad's furious. Mom isn't eating. Everything is a mess. You can't do this to us. You have to fix what you broke. Fix what I broke. I let out a slow, controlled breath. They still didn't understand. Or maybe they refused to. Another voicemail came in as I stood there. This one from an unfamiliar number, but the message made my stomach clench. Mrs. Miller, this is Dr. Avery from Portland General. I've been trying to reach you. It's about your father. Please call back. I stared at the screen, pulse slowing, breath thickening. My father. Hospital. A dozen emotions flickered through me, colliding, shattering, rebuilding, confusion, grief, disbelief, old wounds cracking open like thin ice. I replayed the message, then replayed it again. My fingers curled into my palm. He was a cruel man, an unforgiving man, a man who had never once apologized for the damage he caused. But he was still my father, and I had spent years carrying the imprint of his voice in the back of my skull, trying and failing to please someone who never saw me. I sank into my office chair, the silence suddenly heavy. Was I supposed to go back? Did I owe him that? Would he even want me there? The phone buzzed again, this time a text. From Victoria. Dad had a heart episode. He's stable now. You need to come. Now. Then another mom is terrified. She keeps asking for you. And that, more than anything, cracked something inside me. My mother had never asked for me before. Not like this. Not without trying to control me. Not without conditions. I pressed the phone to my forehead, breathing deeply. The kitchen door creaked behind me. Hazel Sam's voice drifted in gently. You disappeared. Everything all right? I didn't turn around. Instead, I lowered the phone slowly and whispered, my father's in the hospital. Sam crossed the room, instantly pulling the chair beside me. Talk to me, she said softly. I swallowed the knot in my throat. I don't know what to feel. Do you want to go back to Portland? My voice cracked. I don't know. Sam reached out, covering my hand with hers. You don't owe them your peace, but you may owe yourself closure. I closed my eyes, letting her words sink through the cracks. Closure, not forgiveness, not duty. Closure. I'm scared, I whispered. If I go back, I'm scared I'll fall into the same patterns, the same guilt. Sam squeezed my hand gently. Hazel, listen to me. You are not the same woman who left that house. You're stronger now. You have your own life, your own home, your own company. You can walk back into that hospital as the woman you are today, not the girl they once controlled. I let the words fill the room. Then Lily's small footsteps pattered against the hallway floor. Mommy, she called. Can we go to the beach, please? Sam looked at me with soft understanding. You go, she said. Clear your head. I'll stay with Lily later if you need to think. I nodded and stood smoothing my sweater. Come on, baby, I said, lifting Lily into my arms. Let's get our shoes. Minutes later, we were walking along the shoreline, the cold sand crunching beneath our boots. Lily ran ahead, chasing the foam of the waves, giggling as they retreated. The sky stretched endlessly above us, a canvas of steel blue clouds and soft winter light. I watched the horizon. I breathed. I walked. And slowly the storm inside me settled. After a while, Lily ran back to me and held my hand. Are you sad, Mommy? Maybe a little, I said honestly. Do you need a hug? I bent down and wrapped her small warm arms around my neck. The ocean roared behind us like a heartbeat. Thank you, I whispered into her hair. She pulled back, eyes bright. I'm good at hugs. You really are. As we stood there, the wind tugging at our coats, something became clear. If I didn't go to see my father, I would regret it, not because he deserved it, but because I needed to face the part of my life that had shaped me, scarred me, and tried to silence me. I needed to see him one last time, not as a child seeking approval, but as a woman standing in her own truth. I stood tall, lifting my chin as the wind swept across the shore. When I returned to the house, Sam looked at me, searching my face. "Well?" she asked quietly. I exhaled. "I'm going," I said, "but I'm not going for them." "Then who are you going for?" Sam asked. I met her eyes. "For me," I whispered. And that was the moment, quiet and steady, when the shift happened. Not because I was returning to my family, but because this time I wasn't going back as their daughter. I was going back as myself. The hospital in Portland was quieter than I expected when I walked in, just after dusk. Lily's small hand curled tightly around mine. Fluorescent lights cast a cold glow over the lobby, and the faint smell of antiseptic floated through the air. My heartbeat thudded steadily in my ears, not frantic, not frightened, just aware. As if my body knew this was a crossing point, a threshold between the woman I had been and the woman I was becoming. At the reception desk, a nurse smiled gently. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said. "I'm here to see Richard Miller. I'm his daughter." The word daughter tasted strange, like a language I hadn't spoken in years. The nurse checked her chart. "He's in cardiac recovery. Second floor, room 212. Lily squeezed my hand. "Are you scared, Mommy?" "No," I whispered, brushing my thumb across her knuckles. "I'm just thinking." We stepped into the elevator, and as the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirrored panel. I didn't look like the girl they'd spent years breaking down. I didn't even look like the woman they kicked out 2 nights ago. I looked resolute. The elevator doors opened. Room 212 was at the end of a long hallway, the television glow spilling onto the floor beneath the door. I paused outside, my pulse steady, then lifted my hand to knock. Before I could, the door opened. Victoria stood there, eyes rimmed red, mascara smudged. She froze when she saw me. "You came," she whispered. "Yes," I said evenly. She stepped aside, but her voice dropped into something sharp, old, familiar. "Mom's been crying all day," she said. "Dad's upset. You shouldn't have." I raised a hand. "Stop." She blinked at the word. "I'm not here for a fight," I said. "I'm here because I heard Dad was in the hospital." Victoria swallowed and stepped back. Inside, my mother sat beside the bed, clutching a crumpled tissue. When she looked up and saw me, relief flashed across her features, quickly followed by shame. "Hazel," she breathed. "Oh, thank God." She stood and rushed forward, stopping just short of touching me. Lily peeked up from behind my leg. My mother's face softened. "Hi, sweetheart." Lily lifted a small hand in a timid wave. Then slowly my mother turned to me again. "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "How is he?" Her gaze shifted to the bed. My father lay there, eyes closed, chest rising shallowly beneath the white blanket. Machines hummed softly around him, beeping, monitoring, keeping rhythm. "He had a cardiac episode," my mother said. "Stress. High blood pressure. The doctors say he needs rest. Stress." I wondered if she knew. I could taste the irony in the word. When his eyes opened, he blinked, confused, then focused on me. He didn't speak at first, just stared, as if trying to decide whether I was real, or whether I belonged here. Finally his voice came out hoarse. "You came." I did. Why? I held his gaze unflinching. "To see for myself." He exhaled shakily, eyes closing for a moment. I thought, after what happened? He shook his head. "I didn't look away. You wanted me gone." He opened his eyes again. "That isn't don't," I said quietly. "Not this time." My mother clasped her hands together hard. "Hazel, we didn't mean you meant every word," I said softly. "Maybe you regret it now. But you meant it." The room fell still. My father shifted, grimacing slightly as if the truth itself hurt. "You cut off the trust," he said. "Yes. You froze the accounts. Yes. You left us with nothing." "That isn't true," I said calmly. "I left you with yourselves." He let that sink in. The monitor beeped a little faster. "I needed to," I added. "For me, for my daughter." My father closed his eyes, breathing through the weight of it. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, shaken. "I didn't expect you to walk away. I waited. I didn't expect he whispered that you would choose your life over us, because I never had before I said, and that almost destroyed me. My mother took a step toward me. Hazel, you have to understand, we thought you were struggling. We thought you thought I failed, I said. You never once asked how I was managing. You didn't even ask how I supported myself after the divorce. You didn't care. You just assumed I deserved it. Victoria bristled, but she didn't interrupt. My mother's eyes glistened. We worried about you. You worried about the version of me that stayed small, I said. Silence filled every corner of the room. Finally, my father spoke again. You were always different. Harder to read, harder to help, harder to control, I corrected. His jaw tightened. That's not what I meant, but it's what was true. Lily tugged on my hand gently, her voice small. Mommy, I knelt beside her. Yes, baby. Is Grandpa sick? I nodded. He's getting help. She reached out, touching my cheek. Are you sad? I swallowed. A little. She hugged me tightly, her arms warm and sure around my neck. My mother watched the scene as if seeing something she'd never understood. When I stood again, my father's eyes were wet. It startled me more than anything else. Hazel, he whispered. I didn't realize. Everything I did, everything I said, his voice broke. It wasn't supposed to be like this. For a moment, just a breath, I saw something fragile in him, fragile and very human. But fragility wasn't the same as change. I'm not here to rewrite the past, I said gently. And I'm not here to fix anything. I came because I needed to know you were alive. A tear slid down my mother's cheek. Are you going to come home? She whispered. No, I said. The single syllable echoed harder than a shout. But we need you, she stammered. I shook my head. You need money. You need the trust. You don't need me. My father closed his eyes again, leaning back against the pillow. Then why did you come? He asked softly. I looked at Lily, my anchor, my reason, then back at him. To end this the right way, I said. To tell you face to face that I'm not carrying this anymore. Any of it. The blame, the guilt, the expectations, the silence. My mother's hand flew to her chest. I'm letting go, I said. Finally. My father swallowed, pain flickering across his features. So this is goodbye. No, I said. It's truth. I stepped back, taking Lily's hand. My mother reached for me, but stopped as if afraid of breaking something delicate. Hazel, she whispered, will we ever be a family again? I met her eyes, really met them. That depends, I said softly, on whether you learn what family actually means. Victoria looked away, blinking hard. My father didn't speak. I turned to leave Lily walking beside me in tiny, determined steps. As I reached the doorway, I heard my father's voice barely above a whisper. I am sorry. 3 words, too late to fix the past, but enough to mark the moment. I didn't turn around. Instead, I whispered just loud enough for him to hear, I wish you peace. Then, Lily and I walked down the hallway, leaving behind a lifetime of ache, expectations, and echoes. And as the elevator doors slid shut, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I wasn't going back. The airport in Portland was wrapped in the soft blue-gray light of early morning when I walked through the departures terminal with Lily's hand in mine. Families rushed past us, suitcases, rolling babies, crying couples, whispering about gate numbers. But everything around me felt strangely still, as if the world were moving in slow motion and I alone remained steady. Maybe it was the closure. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the quiet certainty that I had finally stepped out of a shadow I'd lived in far too long. At the security line, Lily tugged my sleeve. Mommy, yes, sweetheart. Are we going back to our house? Yes, I said. To our home. She smiled, relieved, and pressed her stuffed polar bear to her cheek. Good. I like the waves. I bent down and kissed her forehead. So do I. As we boarded the plane, I sent a quick text to Sam, headed back. I'll call when we land. Her reply came instantly. Good, I'll have dinner waiting. That simple message warmed something inside me, something that had been cold and tight since childhood. Someone waiting for me, someone choosing me without conditions, someone who saw me outside the lens of obligation. The plane lifted off the city, shrinking beneath us, and for the first time since Christmas Eve, I exhaled fully. When we landed in Orange County, the California sun greeted us like an old friend, bright, warm, unapologetically alive. A driver from my security team met us at the gate, and as soon as we stepped outside, I felt the heaviness of Portland finally fall away. The drive along Newport Coast was everything I needed. The Pacific shimmering under the afternoon sun, palm trees swaying gently, cliffs rising in elegant curves. Each mile felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. When the gates to my home opened, Lily squealed. "Mommy, look. Our house missed us," I laughed, lifting her into my arms. "I think you're right." Inside, the air smelled faintly of jasmine candles and fresh linen. Sunlight streamed through the glass walls, filling every room with warmth that felt like forgiveness, without the pain that usually accompanied it. As I set our bags down, my phone buzzed. HarborTech contract, final implementation schedule attached. Work. The part of my life that had never betrayed me. I skimmed the email while walking toward the kitchen. Everything in the contract looked smooth, efficient, perfectly aligned with Lunadine's goals. A wave of pride washed over me, real, grounding pride. "Welcome home." I looked up. Sam stood in the doorway, holding a bag of groceries and wearing an oversized sweater that made her look both soft and confident. Her smile reached her eyes. "You didn't have to cook," I said, touched. She shrugged. "You've been carrying the world for days. The least I can do is carry dinner." Lily ran to her. "Miss Sam." Sam scooped her up effortlessly. "Hey, kiddo. Got you chocolate ice cream for after." Lily gasped. "That's my favorite, I know," Sam said, winking. Then she set Lily down and turned to me. "You look lighter." "I feel lighter," I said. We cooked together something simple: pasta, garlic bread, a salad, the kind of meal real families make without thinking. Lily decorated the table with seashells she'd collected. And when we finally sat down to eat, I felt a warmth I hadn't known since childhood. Halfway through dinner, Sam looked at me thoughtfully. "How did it go?" Seeing him, I set my fork down gently. "It was more complicated than I expected," he apologized. Sam blinked. "Did he really?" "Yes, but it doesn't erase everything. It doesn't fix anything. It just is." "And how do you feel?" "Free," I said softly. "Not healed yet, but free." Sam reached across the table, brushing my hand with her fingertips. "Good. You deserve that." Later that evening, after Lily went to bed and the kitchen was clean, we stepped out onto the balcony. The ocean was dark and deep, moonlight shimmering across the waves like silver thread. I wrapped my sweater tighter around myself. "I don't know what happens next with them," I said. "You don't need to," Sam replied. "You get to choose what happens next." I looked at her profile, the way the wind tugged gently at her hair, the calm in her eyes. "You sound very wise tonight," I said. She smiled. "It's easy to be wise when it's not my family." I let out a soft laugh. Then she asked, "Are you going to rebuild things with them?" I considered my answer carefully. "I don't want revenge," I said slowly. "But I don't want the old relationship either. If there's a future, it has to be different. They have to be different. And if they're not," Sam asked, "then I'll keep living my life. With Lily. With the people who choose me." Sam's eyes softened. "That sounds right." A comfortable silence settled between us as we watched the waves. Then my phone buzzed, another message from HarborTech. Instead of irritation, I felt excitement. "I should review this," I murmured. Sam smirked. "CEO mode activated." "Yes," I said, smiling. "Very much." But before I could turn toward my office, she gently placed a hand on my arm. "Hazel, yes, you're doing great." Something warm bloomed in my chest, unexpected, quiet, tender. "Thank you," I whispered. And I meant it. After she left for the night, I walked through the house, checking on Lily, straightening the blankets, brushing her hair off her forehead. Her breathing was steady, deep, unburdened. I stood there for a moment, grateful for her softness, her resilience, her belief that the world was kind. Then I went to my office. The ocean glimmered through the windows as I began reviewing implementation plans, timelines, and security integrations. Everything felt sharp and clear. My mind was mine again. And somewhere between checking the final line of code and signing a new set of documents, I realized something profound. I didn't just survive my family's collapse. I outgrew them. And tomorrow, I would wake up and build something even stronger. Not for them, for me. The sun filtered through the sheer curtains of my Newport Coast bedroom the next morning, warm and golden, as if the universe had decided to start fresh with me. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread sitting on my chest. No unanswered expectations, no guilt waiting at the edge of my bed. Just light and quiet. And the soft hum of the ocean beyond the glass walls. Lily stirred beside me, her tiny hand splayed across my arm. She blinked up at me, still half asleep. "Mommy," she whispered, "do we have to go anywhere today?" I shook my head and kissed the top of her head. "No, sweetheart. Today we stay home." She sighed happily, curling into me like a small, warm star. It was moments like this, simple but full, that convinced me I'd made the right decisions, every single one of them. By mid-morning, Zoe called. "Big day," she said, voice bright. "You're trending." I blinked. "Trending how you made the top innovators under 40 list." She paused for dramatic effect. "And the rising philanthropy spotlight. Oh, and a Forbes columnist wants to do a feature on you. A long one." I let out a small laugh. "That sounds terrifying." "It sounds perfect," she corrected. "And overdue." I thanked her and promised to come in later in the week, but not today, not for anything. After we hung up, Lily tugged at my sleeve. "Beach?" she asked with a hopeful smile. I nodded. "Beach." We walked down the stone steps behind the house to the private shore where the waves lapped gently at the sand like fingertips. Lily ran ahead, chasing foam and gathering shells in her small hands. I watched her twirl, sunlight catching in her hair, her laughter echoing over the water. A freedom she didn't have to earn. A childhood she didn't have to survive. While she played, I checked my phone. Dozens of new messages, mentions, emails. But one notification froze me in place. A donation confirmation from Lunadyne Foundation, $150, 0000. To a Women in Tech Training Initiative. Anonymous contribution. I knew exactly where it came from. Me, from the part of me that no longer needed applause or validation. The part that wanted to lift other women the way no one had ever lifted me. I smiled and locked the phone, letting the Pacific wind carry the moment away. "Mommy, look," Lily called, running back. "I found a magic rock." It was a piece of sea glass, softened by years of waves, reshaped by time, just like me. We spent the afternoon painting shells in the sunroom. Lily smeared bright pink across every surface within reach, and I didn't stop her. She giggled at every blob of paint, turning mistakes into masterpieces without hesitation. I wished I'd learned that earlier in life. By late afternoon, Sam arrived with iced coffee and a grin. "Is this the official Hazel doesn't owe anyone her time day?" she asked, leaning on the doorframe. "Every day is that day now," I said, handing her a paintbrush. She laughed, settling beside us to paint a tiny blue star on one of Lily's shells. At one point, she nudged my foot gently. "You seem good." "I am," I said, "because of work." "The contract." "No," I said, looking up. "Because I chose peace." Sam's expression softened. "I'm glad." We painted until the sun dipped low, turning the ocean gold. Later, after dinner, we ended up on the rooftop deck, me, Lily, asleep on my lap, and Sam sitting across from me with 2 mugs of cocoa. The sky stretched wide and velvet black above us, constellations glinting like stories waiting to be rewritten. Sam set her mug down. "Can I ask you something, of course? Do you think you'll ever reconcile with them?" My chest tightened, but not in the old way, more like a healed scar stretching where new skin had grown. I don't know, I said. I think, if there's ever a future with my family, it won't be because I begged for one. It'll be because they choose to grow. And until then, I looked down at Lily, brushing a curl from her cheek. Until then, I'll teach her the opposite of what I learned. Sam nodded thoughtfully. And what's that? That love doesn't require shrinking, I said softly. That belonging isn't earned through pain. That family is the people who show up, not the people who demand. Sam leaned back, eyes on me, her expression full of something warm and steady. You're going to change the world, Hazel. I shook my head. I just want to change hers, I whispered, looking at my daughter. The wind lifted the hem of my sweater, cool and gentle. Somewhere below us, waves crashed in rhythmic applause. Sam tilted her head. What now? I looked out at the moonlit horizon, at the life I had rebuilt piece by piece on the foundation of my own strength. Now, I said, I build something new, something meaningful, something that has nothing to do with survival. Like what I took a slow, deep breath. The Aurora Initiative, I said. Grants for single moms in tech, training programs, community support, real doors for real women. Sam's eyes lit up. Hazel, that's incredible. It's time, I said. She clinked her mug gently against mine. To new beginnings? To new beginnings, I echoed. Lily stirred in her sleep, her hand reaching instinctively for mine. I held it softly. As the stars shimmered above us, I realized something I hadn't felt in decades. I was exactly where I belonged. Not in the house where I was raised. Not in the echo of someone else's expectations. Not in the tight corners of silence and apology. But here, in the open, in the light, in a life I'd carved with my own hands. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was ready for it. The morning of the Aurora Initiative's launch felt different from any other milestone in my life. Not exhilarating, not overwhelming, just right. The kind of right that settles into your bones, warm and certain, like you finally stepped into the life that had been waiting for you all along. The event hall overlooked the Pacific sunlight shimmering across the water as if celebrating with us. Rows of chairs faced a small stage, decorated with soft white lights, and framed photos of women engineers, coders, young mothers, carrying laptops in one hand and babies in the other. Stories that looked like mine. Stories that deserved more than survival. Lily sat in the front row wearing a pale blue dress and her favorite sparkly shoes, swinging her legs back and forth, her curls bouncing as she waved at me. Her smile gave me strength I didn't know I still needed. Behind her, Sam and Zoe sat together, whispering and laughing quietly, their support a steady hum in the room. A few investors mingled near the back. Former colleagues, journalists, women who had been waiting for something like this, women who didn't yet know that they already belonged here. As I stepped onto the stage, the room fell quiet, not with expectation, but with openness. I took a breath, deep grounding, and began. When I started Lunadyne, I said, my voice echoing gently across the hall, I didn't imagine I'd one day stand in front of a room like this. For years I built things in silence. I worked alone. I struggled alone. I succeeded alone. A soft murmur rippled across the audience, a shared understanding. But no one succeeds alone, I continued. They survive alone. And survival is not the same as belonging. I paused, letting the weight of those words settle. For a long time I believed that visibility was dangerous, that staying silent was safer, that shrinking would hurt less than standing tall. My gaze drifted to Lily. She smiled up at me, proud and certain in a way I had never been at her age. But then I had someone watching me, I said softly. Someone who deserved a mother who wasn't afraid to take up space. A quiet laugh, a few nods, a few tears. And today I said, we're opening the doors for women who've been told they don't belong. Women who have been underestimated, dismissed, overlooked. Women who have ideas, potential, courage, and no one offering them a seat at the table. I gestured toward the banner behind me. The Aurora Initiative is more than a program. It's a beginning, a promise, a reminder that dawn always comes, no matter how long the night has been. Warm applause filled the room. Not loud, not frantic, just real, I continued. We're starting with 30 full scholarships, then hiring 20 interns, then building a mentorship pipeline. And eventually, we build an entire ecosystem where single mothers in tech don't just survive, they lead. When I stepped down from the stage, the audience rose to their feet. I felt the applause like sunlight, gentle but steady, warming places inside me that had stayed cold far too long. Sam met me halfway to the aisle, pulling me into a tight hug. You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. Zoe grinned. Hazel, they loved you. I looked toward Lily. She ran into my arms, wrapping her small hands around my neck. You were the best, Mommy, she said, beaming. The best in the whole world. My throat tightened. Thank you, baby. The rest of the afternoon passed in a warm blur, handshakes, conversations, smiles, gratitude. Women approached me with stories that felt like echoes of my own. Investors asked about expansion. Journalists scribbled notes about the quiet CEO who became a force. But the moment I remember most is standing near the cliffside balcony alone for the first time since my speech, watching the waves crash below. The wind carried the scent of jasmine and salt water. The ocean shimmered like a mirror, reflecting every version of me I had survived. A voice broke the quiet. You did good, Hazel. I turned. My mother stood there, hands clasped, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. She looked older, somehow not in years, but in humility. For a moment we just stared at each other. I heard about the event, she said. I wanted to see it for myself. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. Your father's recovering. He read the articles about Lunadyne, about the contracts. He's proud of you. I am too. Years ago I would have melted under those words. Today I stood still. You taught me something, I said quietly. Family has to be earned, not demanded. She swallowed. I know, she whispered. And I'm sorry, truly. The wind brushed between us, carrying the tension away. For once she didn't reach for me. She just let me choose. And I chose calm. I hope you find peace, I said gently. She nodded and left. Sam found me soon after. Everything okay? Yes, I said, watching the horizon. Everything is finally okay. Later that evening, the house filled with noise, Lily giggling as she played with her new sea glass collection, Sam and Zoe debating dessert flavors, music drifting from the kitchen. It wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. It was life. Real. Soft. Welcoming. After everyone left and Lily fell asleep, curled against a stuffed dolphin, I stepped out to the balcony, wrapped in a light blanket. The moonlit ocean stretched endlessly before me, silver and vast. I breathed in the quiet. Then I turned to the camera because there was one more thing I needed to say. Not to my family, not to my team, but to the people who had walked with me through this story. If you've ever been pushed aside, I said softly. If you've ever been told you're too much or not enough, if you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, you're not alone. Sometimes the hardest goodbye is the doorway to everything better. I smiled gently, honestly. And if this story meant something to you, if it made you feel a little stronger, a little braver, tell me in the comments. I want to know your story too. And if you want more stories like this about strength, justice, and second chances, stay with me. Like, subscribe, and let's keep going together. The waves crashed softly below as if agreeing. A new life was beginning, and this time it was mine.